General Electric to me is when I just touched a thermostat and I got a gigantic spark. Like I'm almost welded my finger to the thermostat. What are your thoughts on this article, Kane?
Well, it's interesting. I mean, we've all talked about how there's significant supply chain issues, triggered by COVID even before that. And so to see a company that's, I mean, headquartered really in China, right? I mean, the GE Appliances was bought by Haier about 5 years ago. Decide to invest here in the States, decide to put jobs here in the States. I mean, there are supply chain and operations kind of implications to that, right? The onshoring implications, the reshoring implications. So it's just interesting to see. I think we're going to see more of this going forward, because I think there's value in having your manufacturing close to your points of distribution. There's definitely operations benefit to that. So it's cool.
You look at, it's funny you mentioned General Electric to somebody and they think of a company that was started in like the 1940s and they made like TVs. I think they were responsible for RCA. And then you look at it, you realize this was Thomas Edison's company. This was a whole collection of companies that like Morgan ended up backing and turned it into General Electric. And I'm sitting there looking at a unit of Chinese appliance maker. And it's like, can we get the stuff back on shore, right? Reshoring, I guess, is one of the topics right now. I mean, they've been talking manufacturing renaissance for how long? And now we're trying to get some of the jobs back. And I think one of the issue is not beyond supply chain, is how are we going to staff manufacturing facilities when we haven't been training anybody to work in manufacturing?
Right.
That's usually my first reaction is when I see these newsletters come out and it's like, we're going to hire 600 people, we're going to hire 1,000 people. My first reaction is that is great, bring manufacturing back to the US. But then I ask myself, how are we going to staff this? Are there enough people to do it? I'm always scratching my head there.
And then, you're running a manufacturing executive search firm, you deal with this conversation every day and it sounds great. And the company's like, hey, we're going to hire 600 people. Go find us 20 manufacturing engineers. And then your first thought is, well, usually manufacturing engineers are in places where they're manufacturing things, which isn't here. And you start thinking, well, do you bring back expats? Do you start looking at, people that were in Mexico, that were in Asia, or do you try to grab some young engineers and try to build them up? Well, how long does it take to make someone become a productive and efficient and creative manufacturing engineer? It's not something you can just like snap your fingers and say, hey, here's 10 years of manufacturing knowledge in 24 months, right? There is no manufacturing engineering for dummies. And we've seen people from automotive companies to motorcycle manufacturers we worked with that had that same issue. It's, we need these people, but they don't exist.
If you project out, I'm just thinking here about the kind of long-term impact of bringing so many jobs back onshore. You know how like you get these one town or one company towns all across the country. I'm looking like Lafayette, Georgia. I didn't look at it, but it sounds like a smallish town. And what happens if manufacturing leaves again, and all these people become reliant on one factory or one company in the town? I mean, what do you guys think of that?
I think that's the story of the Rust Belt. I mean, what was it? There's a big GM plant that happened to down in Ohio. I think they might even did a documentary on it, but that happens in northern parts of Michigan where there is a tier one supplier. They supplied all the jobs, and then when they're gone, there's nothing else. I don't know how you get around that at the end of the day. But there's opportunities where if we're going to reshore, can you come back and say, okay, there was a plant here 20 years ago. And, the plant's still there. unfortunately, is a talent there. Like we've done a lot of relocation deals where there was like new industrial campuses, and someone's got to be that first company that goes there, but the local talent base doesn't support it. And then you got to start moving people there. That's a challenge. But the difficult part is right now there was it's a one employer town, and then they leave, and it devastates that economy. Right. That's happened everywhere. From the entire Rust Belt felt that. Pittsburgh took them how long to kind of transition from the steel to where they are now, and they bounced back. But how many decades was that transition? It was a long time.
Yeah. Because there are so many benefits to bringing jobs back too. But there's a line in the article that says that the company plans to install more robots and automated processes to aid the workers too. So, I mean, yeah, we can think of all the nice human elements to all of this, but over a long enough time period, manufacturing gets more automated, and what happens to these jobs long term? I don't know.
And Dennis, you saw a line in here about why they're bringing these jobs back.
Yeah, one thing that I noticed was that America right now we're cooking more, and part of the reason why they're investing in this facility is for their stovetop range tops, because there's such a there's an increase in purchasing for these items because we're building more homes and we're cooking more at home. And that to me is interesting, because when I'm driving out, I'm seeing some of our restaurants fully packed, and I'm wondering, are people really cooking at home? But this article definitely contradicts that, and they have the data to back that up. And I don't know if that's going to be solely because of COVID, or if that's going to change, in the next 12 to 18 months.
I look at it as, Kane and I were on this kick last year of like making sourdough. And I got some starter going, and Kane tried making his own starter, and then I mailed Kane some starter in like an envelope. And we were on a kick for like going back and forth, like, hey, did you try this? Did you try that? Because we had a lot of time on our hands. When's the last time you made sourdough, Kane?
It's been like a year.
Yeah, I don't know what I don't know what I have in my refrigerator, but where my starter is, it's got about an inch of alcohol on top of it.
Yeah.
So like at this point, I'm probably distilling more moonshine than I am making sourdough. And I kind of feel like that's what happened with the fitness industry. You saw Peloton boom and then bust. What Kane, you said that other episode we did, they doubled their head count in a year.
Mm-hmm.
Did we think everyone's going to sit in their basement and ride Pelotons for the rest of their life? And as soon as the gyms opened back up, we went back to the gym. So there might be this short-term blip, housing construction's up, remodels, there's those flip your house shows are back on TV. I can see where we have a little bit of an appliance boom, but do we think that the current, looking at Gen Z and millennials, are they going to just stay cooking at home when things return to normal, or are they going to go right back to Chipotle Grill? My guess is they're going to be ordering food from an app and not cooking at home. So you'll have a very pretty range top. I don't know if you've ever been in those people's homes that they have like that $100,000 kitchen. They got the range top, they got the double oven, they got all the cool stuff. And then you look at it and you're like, that's never been used. I think that might be where we're at in 24 months.
Which goes back to the point. I think that's a really important point, which is what happens to these jobs then? Like if we keep making decisions based on this inflated demand or artificially inflated demand for the time being, I then worry about the long-term impact of the town too. Because you guys know where I live. You drive anywhere around here, and you see these one-employer towns that are just devastated.
And Kane, you got a Cracker Barrel there. I think everything's gonna be A-okay.
Thinking about these small towns, does COVID change that? Because a lot of people are fleeing the major cities now and either going back home to their parents or moving back over to the suburbs where maybe these towns now are becoming a little bit more populated. Does that eventually go away? I guess we'll see in the next 18 to 24 months, but maybe it stays. Maybe people don't want to go back to the city and they do end up staying in these smaller towns that they came from.
And I've personally known a few people that have moved out of the city in the last 18 months. And then I've been looking for property on the outskirts of a metro area, and that market has boomed. People wanted properties with more land. They didn't want to be around dense population. I was helping a family member try to get rid of their house. They had someone pass away. And to me, they're not in the most desirable area of Michigan, to be honest. They're out in the sticks. But their house value went crazy. And there's no homes for sale in that market anymore. And for stuff that used to sit, 8 months is going in a day. It's people want more space and more land. If you're going to work from home, you want some land outside and you want to go for a walk. You want to be out by nature. So can some of these plants take advantage of that, where it's like, okay, we're going to open up in, northern Wisconsin or Michigan or Minnesota, where you can live that outdoor lifestyle, but still have good employment. And that might completely, transition. Yeah, I'm assuming the office jobs are still going to get concentrated in the big cities. You're going to try to go after those talent pools of, new grads. But, on the industrial and manufacturing side, I think about the people I know that work in manufacturing. They like to fish, they like to hunt. Is it that hard to sell someone and say, hey, we're going to open a plant up by Traverse City, move up there, and you can live that outdoor lifestyle and have a great job? Depending on who you are, doesn't sound that bad.
It definitely doesn't sound that bad. Especially, recently going back into the cities, going back into Detroit and Chicago. I left those cities, going back home and thinking, I'm not as excited to be in that big city anymore, just because we've been at home for the last, almost 2 years now. And I feel like there's a little bit of comfort just being away from those densely populated areas. And I don't know how much of that bounce back we're going to have. Is everyone going to go back into those major cities, or are they going to be, comfortable being at home again? And I don't think we're going to go back to normal as much as we think we are.
I mean, people are saying that, New York was going to die. Like, New York's not going to die. It's just going to take a while for it to bounce back, though. But I think a lot of people went there because that was opportunity. You go to the big city for opportunity. And now you realize that I can have that opportunity from anywhere. I could move to Utah and live, there's someone we work with at our companies that's a consultant videographer. He works extremely hard. Right now he's in Germany. He's all over the place, but half the videos I see him posting on Instagram, he's snowboarding. And it's like, well, do you want to live somewhere where you can get your work done and then go hit the mountain? Like, you start thinking about, or I can live by the beach now. You start thinking about, well, how does work integrate with where I want to live and what I want to do? I don't have to go live in a big city where I have a 700 square foot apartment and I'm 4 hours from the mountain. We see a lot of shifts going on. And I don't think we've completely have seen how that's going to play out just yet.
Surprised at how much manufacturing is in the state of Georgia. And I don't think a lot of people realize that or understand that. And it's always like, man, there is a lot of different industries in the state of Georgia, a lot more manufacturing there. I'm always, I always think of more of the Midwest, Michigan, Pittsburgh, Ohio. But there's a lot going on in Georgia. And second, the one part in the article that says that Hire has the rights to the GE name until 2056. I'm wondering, like, what played a role in that? Is that why that time frame? Obviously, they want to keep the GE name just because it's GE, but what caused them to say, okay, in 2056 we're done?
Yeah, that's interesting. Just like an arbitrary 60-year time frame.
40-year. I think they were purchased in 2016.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, you're right. Yeah, sorry. I don't know
Yeah.
why I thought that. Yes, 40 years.
Is there anyone else doing this that you've seen?
What do you mean by that?
Like, has there been any big news lately of people reshoring? Like, I feel like it was in the news often, right? But since COVID started, maybe not as much.
You know, in terms of our customers, I don't really hear a lot of what their plans are for the next 12 to 18 months. I think they're still trying to figure some things out. But the folks that we're talking to, you know, the heads of HR or the hiring managers for these executive searches, they're not really giving us much more detail of what their plans are for the future. So I haven't seen a lot of these scenarios come
And if you
about.
project too, like if there's so much uncertainty around rates, I mean, the cost of capital will go up, and so doing any expansion like this probably gets more expensive if you think about the next couple of years.
I also have
So
to
maybe it's not as attractive. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
It's maybe not so attractive to do reshoring or onshoring over the next few years if money gets more expensive.
Money is going to get more expensive. You just wonder, do you try to ride this bubble for as long as you can and make as much as you can? Or do you just sit back and say, we're going to leave some money on the table, but when this thing pops, we're going to be in better shape? You know, we look at that 6 trillion that was pumped into the system. We had a everything asset class bubble. The boomers are sitting on 68 trillion. There's a lot of money sloshing around out there. Look, when they're selling a dog coat from Montclair for $700 and it's sold out. Don't tell me we're not in a bubble. So let's look at, you know, are they expanding right now because they have a need, but are they going to end up where Peloton is, where they saw the spike and they're trying to maximize it, not realizing that this can't last forever? So I'm kind of curious where maybe that's why we don't see more of this. People are stepping back and saying, I know people that are in the boat industry and they're making less boats than they were in prior years because they're like, this is going to slow down. And the last thing they want to do is like be sitting on $50 million of boat inventory. That if you saw what happened in like 2008, good luck offloading that stuff. So I think there's people that are going to keep their foot on the pedal and they're going to maximize this as much as they can. I see some other companies are being a little more cautious at this point.
There's also the COVID factor, right? Like the way that COVID can affect the consumer demand. Like Dennis, you talked about the demand for the appliances at the consumer level. Like if there's any kind of ramification of this variant or another variant, then it's almost too difficult to project out whether you need another plant, because you start to see the bullwhip all along the supply chain. So I totally get why we haven't seen as much of this.
Who likes uncertainty?
Right.
Nobody.
It's, you know, every one of our clients, for every company we own, if there's one bit of bad news comes out, they all roll up in a ball for 3 weeks and say, let's see what happens. It's, it's cool to see them doing this. And maybe they know something we don't know. Maybe they think this is going to run 3 or 5 years, right? It just makes you start seeing cracks in things. And you wonder how long can this last? And unless we keep pumping in the equal amount of money that we did in the last 18 months, we can't sustain this. It's like, we saw peak everything in the last 18 months. Now the money dries up. Where does that leave us? I don't know.
I wonder if this is also just to backfill demand. I mean, I'd like you guys mentioned, you can't buy things. I know a family that is waiting on appliances, and they've been waiting for months now. Does setting up all these factories allow them to backfill the demand, and then it doesn't really matter whether there's forward growth or not?
I mean, Dennis was at the BMW dealer, and correct me if I'm wrong. They told you that they won't even have excess inventory on the lot until the end of 2022, right?
Yeah, it said they don't see this going back to somewhat normal for another 12 months.
So you can order a car, but you're not going to see that, come lease a BMW for $499 in the newspaper and go down there and say, hey, I want that white one. There is no white one. They don't have anything. I saw more used Fords on the BMW lot than I saw BMWs.
Yeah.
So you're right, Kane. There is this built-in demand where they do have to get caught up, but then there's that question of then what?
Yeah, as long as you can still get the BMW cap, it's okay.
Hey, they'll sell you the $60 T-shirt all day.
Right.
I almost bought one.
Hey, where'd you get that BMW hat? Hey, they didn't have any cars. So,
it's exactly where my mind was at. It was a keychain, maybe a license plate.
but it's, Ken and I did another episode on Rolexes. And I actually just pinged the guy today and I asked him if things gotten any better, because I didn't know we were going to do this show. And he's like, no, it's gotten worse. And I'm like, they're at a point where they had three watches total from Rolex. They're not allowed to order watches from Rolex. And when they can finally order from Rolex, they're saying 6 to 8 months or more. But from the time Kane and I did that episode, and we had quite a few views on it, so we did a follow-up on it. But because the whole industry is experiencing this right now. But if you can't get a Rolex in 12 months, how many other things are out there? I'm trying to get an audio interface for the studio. They're saying October because of this, the chip shortage. Yeah, we got a lot of backup demand. But I just think that we overconsumed in the last 18 months. We'll eventually catch up to that. And then what? We just don't know when that is. Is it 12 months, 18 months, 24 months? Yeah, we'll find out. Any other thoughts?
Well, last thought. One of my recurring themes is that we typically here in the States don't like to address the underlying issue. And if you think back over the last 18 months at all the supply chain issues, it seems like we're waiting for somebody to make a move to try and address an underlying issue, right? Fix one of the cogs in the supply chain. What I like about this story is that it reads like one of the first things where we're making a forward investment to try and make sure that the supply chain doesn't have these kind of issues, at least on the appliance side. So, I'm very curious to see if other companies do this going forward, because it feels like we're addressing the underlying issue.
I mean, we are a country that never wants to fix the issue. I'm going to go to the doctor next week and say, hey, I'm gaining weight. Can you give me a weight loss pill? And he's going to go, James, stop eating double cheeseburgers. That's, God forbid I stop eating double cheeseburgers. I want a pill to fix it. We put Band-Aids on everything. Do we ever really want to look at causality and go back to, what is the root cause? And do we want to fix that? We're just not the country that does that, unfortunately. So we shall see. Anything else to add, Dennis?
No, I thought it was pretty interesting, and love always hearing more jobs here. We just got to get the people.
All right. Well, I'm going to go walk past my fancy range top, and I'm probably going to order some Grubhub. So,
Okay.
All right. I'll catch you.